Hey, I'm glad you stopped by. I want to invite you to listen to my talk, which is about problems that you might face when working on the project which has its team members distributed across the globe and therefore having different cultural backgrounds. I will also try to provide some solutions to these problems. I hope you will enjoy it. Hi everybody, I'm very grateful that you decided to listen to my talk. So today we are going to investigate how it feels to be a mediator in a distributed multicultural team. First of all, let's clarify the terms. For example, a single team with members in San Francisco, New York, London, and Bangalore would be a distributed team. Also, one large project might require a set of teams in different cities, and these teams would be considered distributed teams as well. Multicultural team is one composed of members who have spent their formative years in different countries and therefore learn different values, traditions, and languages. Now, who is a mediator? Obvious enough, it is the one that mediates. A mediator is supposed to remain in the neutral middle rather than taking one side over another. I believe that it is perfectly relevant for each quality assurance engineer, as among all members in a development team, we need to be the most communicative and neutral. We need to mitigate any uncomfortable situations that might happen because they influence the quality. So, why do I think that I have the right to talk about such topic? I have an experience of working in international virtual teams. My first project had a team that consisted of people from Ukraine, Japan, and USA. And now I am working on the British-Ukrainian project, and recently I started another one which involves people from Ukraine, Switzerland, France, and USA. The first problem I want to mention is not surprisingly communication. And I want to split this aspect into cultural issues and linguistic issues. As you remember, I was working with Japanese team, and Japanese team's culture was high context, meaning that people rely more on body language, gestures, tone of voice, facial expressions than on words. Even if you have a video call, you cannot really read the body language and gestures well. Also, it's impolite to reject requests in Japanese culture. So there was a case when I asked for dump with production data, and Japanese team said it will be done, but it never happened, even though I reminded them several times. And it actually means that it was never meant to be done. The problem is that you should have read by their face expression and intonation that your request cannot be satisfied for some reason which you should not ask because it's embarrassing. So culture issues are complicated. Linguistic problems are understandable. Even though the primary communication language, which is English, is the same, people have different pronunciation, use different idiomatic expressions, and have different levels of fluency. There was a conflict situation on my current project where a developer from Ukrainian team and a developer from British team could not come to terms with the solution for database restructuring. And once I saw that a developer from my side wrote a comment addressing a developer from British team, and this comment could be interpreted as extremely rude in context of that particular situation. So I called him immediately and begged, please edit or delete this comment immediately because it's going to be a catastrophe. And he says, but what's the problem? Did I forget to add some polite words? And he said it sincerely, he really meant it, that he didn't understand. And there were no rude words into what he said. It was all about formulation and context, about how it was said. And that is a problem of people raised in Eastern Slavic countries being too direct and not investing enough time into developing soft skills and learning English. To solve issues related to language, I suggest writing meeting notes. Therefore, even if something is unclear due to accents or vocabulary, you will have some keywords written, and it's highly probable that even if you didn't understand something, another member of your team did and might help you. Well, if they don't, you shouldn't be afraid to ask for clarifications. There is nothing wrong about it. You shouldn't be ashamed. Also, when it comes to communication, which requires some actions from the other team, when you ask for something, it's always better to have it written, either in shared chats or in tickets, so that it can be seen and easily tracked. Thus, if a person or the whole team is uneager to fulfill your request for any reason, they will need to explain it, and it will not be your responsibility that something hasn't been done. Another problem is actually part of communication as well. It's about etiquette, which can have various rules across the globe. While some countries practice very informal communication at work, other countries have a formal approach. When it comes to East Asia, there are many levels of politeness based on how well you know the person, whether you are superior or subordinate, do you work in one place or not, who you are talking about. For example, a simple phrase, could you please do this for me, would sound very different in Japanese if you follow the etiquette rules depending on who you are talking to, your boss, your teammate from your location, or your teammate from another location. There are plenty of polite phrases that I had to use. I had to because Japanese team hired me so that they could have a person that understands their mindset and follows their rules. And using these polite formulas would slow down the process of communication. For example, it's a day before release, everything is an awful mess, you're in a hurry, every second matters, and you need to confirm something with Japanese team. You cannot just text them and say, hey, can we catch up on this point, blah, 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 as I would do with my colleagues from USA or Europe. You need to start conversation from, hello, thank you for your kind cooperation and continuous support. I'm so terribly sorry that I have to bother you in this busy time. But is there a chance that we could discuss an important point about tomorrow's release? I'm exaggerating a bit, but not too much. And this is actual for written communication as well as for verbal one. Therefore, your interactions with teams from East Asia might require more time, and time is money. In order to save your time, if you are working with people from East Asia, I recommend you to practice to be more attentive about what you need to discuss, especially when it comes to written communication, so that your message is explicit and detailed and you don't need to go through rituals of politeness over and over again. I know that you might not be eager to learn communication etiquette of other countries, like why should you? But if you can show your team members some respect to their culture and therefore invest into better cooperation because they will perceive you as their people, not somebody from the outside, why don't you do it? You might think that if you and all people you know are using the best, the most convenient tools for communication, documentation, and knowledge sharing, then everybody does, but that is not true. Not everybody uses best practices. On the JP-US-UA project, we had a big problem with the tools. Communication between Ukrainian and US team was going via Slack, between Ukrainian and Japanese team via Skype, between US and Japanese team via email or video calls. As a result, there was no shared chat where all members of all teams would be present. Now let's imagine gathering requirements process. You ask question in one chat, then it turns out that the person who knows the answer is from another team. So you go to another tool, another chat, you ask question, you get an answer, you file a ticket, then the person from the first chat disagrees. And so you're moving from tool to tool, from chat to chat, and again, it takes time. Interesting thing is that JP team loved to send us customer bugs as PowerPoint presentations. They had access to Jira, of course, they could file tickets, but they would prefer doing it as a presentation. It was some kind of tradition. They also had some passion for Google Docs. For example, we had localization tool in our admin panel, but they preferred to edit translations in Google Docs, and then I had to transfer them to the admin tool. In general, all the documents were scattered between Confluence, Google Docs, Dropbox, and private files sent to each other, which was quite a mess when trying to find the right document or when onboarding a new team member. If you can influence such decisions as tool selection, the solution to such problems is very obvious. All the distributed teams should have one means of communication and have one content management system as a knowledge base. The next thing I want to discuss is hierarchy. This is all about being able or unable to make decisions independently, making suggestions, and being listened to. If you have a chance to work with teams from Asia, especially East Asia and Southeast Asia, the first thing you should remember is that their cultures are based on collectivism. And for example, if you have an idea that something could be done better in your development process or testing process on your project, you cannot just meet your CEO in the corridor and talk to them. You need to find a manager who will approve your idea and who will talk about your idea with the one who makes decisions. Also, if you are very young or you just started working on the project, it's very probable that your idea will not be heard, because no matter what was your experience before, what matters is that you haven't spent enough time on this project and haven't earned their respect yet. A sad moment for you about hierarchy is that it's something that you cannot and actually shouldn't fight. So you either don't work with teams that have vertical structures if you are creative and too initiative and innovative, or you just keep calm and do your duties. Actually, I was hired on my first international project as a result of a negative phenomenon, which is distrust. JP team wanted a person who could speak their language, understand their culture, and be their, let's say, spy in the world of foreigners. It's quite normal from psychology point of view that our brain wants to assume that people of your culture are more suitable to work with. Such prejudices require conscious work on how you perceive people. Unfortunately, the impact of distrust in my team was so strong that JP team decided to have a separate testing team in Japan, even though we, the UA team, were assigned to do all the testing job. So after we would have regression before release, JP testing team would retest using our test cases. And needless to say, it's very demotivating when you feel that your work isn't relied on. It wasn't good for business neither, as they had to pay to two testing teams instead of one. As a result, we started feeling quite hostile towards the other team. We started assuming that we are being criticized, and we started competing instead of cooperating. In order to mitigate distrust issues, the best way is to keep people together, make them work together, have some activity that could unite them. For example, we could have documentation reviews together with JP testing team, or we could try pair testing, but we didn't want to learn what they were doing to achieve better quality, and they didn't want to learn about how we work. Even if you're distributed, even if you have different mindsets, you can still cooperate and show the management that their distrust doesn't have any basis. Time zones contribute to the decreased frequency of communication. You might wake up when a member of another team is going to sleep. Daily meetings become either impossible or too inconvenient for some team members. It's very hard when teams are distributed by the area of responsibility. For example, all software testers in one place, all developers in another place, all designers and managers in third place. You start working, you have a new build to test, there is a clear plan for your day's work, and then it turns out that the app crashes immediately after launch. And all the developers are sleeping because it's night where they live, and you are blocked in your work, you cannot complete the task. Also, sometimes you need to work on the weekends. Let's say you need some hot fix for Monday, but the developer fixed it on Friday evening when you aren't working anymore. And if there is a problem with planning and work-life balance on your project, then you will probably retest on Saturday. And there is no definite solution to time zones problem, as most probably each solution will imply some discomfort for part of the team regularly. But what you can do is to have better planning. For example, you know that a new build will be received tomorrow when you come to work, so you should ask the developer to check it before leaving work. Also, it would be great to have people with different responsibilities on different locations. When the team is collocated, there are many small things, small decisions that are made while you are drinking coffee together, smoking, having lunch, or just shouting out something to each other. And you might forget to inform your distributed members as well. My current project with British team has two sub-projects, and Ukrainian team deals with one of them. And recently, there was a situation when we were developing a feature according to the requirements, and then it turns out that some tables in the database are something different from what they look like. Let's imagine that you have a table called customers. And then it turns out that it's just called customers, but in reality, these are shops. And there is no table for customers that might own several shops. And we don't know any relations between customers and shops. And that was something that we didn't know as we joined the project lately. And the other team didn't think about informing us because it was something ordinary and obvious for them. That was how they lived with it for several years. And we had to rethink and redevelop the whole big feature in order to come to terms with the new details that we learned. To avoid such situations, you should communicate more with the other teams, have a proper knowledge base, and be very, very careful about requirements. So, how to become a better mediator? Well, you should be respectful. You should be generous when you share information. You should be precise in what you say. You should be initiative. You should be brave. And when I say respect, maybe you think, what a banal thing to say. It's obvious we all should respect each other. But I'm not talking about respect as a form, not about what you say, but about how you feel. Because I believe that if you pretend to have respect to members of your distributed teams from other countries, but you criticize them and complain about them when talking to your collocated team, it's not respect, it's hypocrisy. And I strongly believe that the key to successful collaboration in multicultural distributed teams is being sincerely respectful. Why should you care at all about communication, processes, mediating conflicts? Your job is testing, not management. That's what you maybe think. Well, I disagree. Nowadays, with the globalization, which has a great impact on how we work nowadays, you cannot be a good quality assurance specialist if you are only good at testing. The need to develop soft skills and management skills is being promoted recently, and it is essential for your career. It's not only your CV that benefits from your cultural intelligence, but also your personality and your ability to think creatively. I hope you enjoyed my talk. I am sorry that I could not cover all the points stated on my slides as we are limited in time, but I have added a list of articles that you can read for free on ResearchGate portal, especially if you are interested in the topic of agile in distributed teams, because this topic is very wide and needs a separate talk. So thank you. Feel free to ask questions, and also you can message me. There is my email on Hastef website. So I will be happy to answer. Thank you.